And now to talk on this topic, we have joining us live from Akure, Bankole Olaoluwa, an economist. Good evening and thank you so much for joining us at this time. Okay, all right. If you can hear me, thank you so much for joining us. If you can hear me now, this 2024 budget is one that seems to be much anticipated. The National Assembly were very happy to receive the president, and then he gave the budget breakdown. What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think the budget presentation is very timely and is very okay. I've also been able to go through the allocation to some of the priority sectors. I think hopefully the National Assembly will be able to work on it by January so that we have a budget so that we're able to maintain the January to December budget cycle. However, if you look at the budget performance for 2024, you discover that and we need to appreciate the fact that when we are talking about budget has two sides. We have the expenditure side and revenue side. So, but unfortunately in Nigeria, our emphasis is also always on the expenditure side. And if the revenue side does not perform, so definitely the expenditure side will not be able to do anything. So that is why you see some disparity in terms of performance of 2024 budget. And as we go for 2025 years, we need to ensure that government has to prioritize revenue side of the budget. Because without prioritizing the revenue side of the budget, then we are not there yet. Because the money, for instance, the over 49 trillion that government has allocated as a budget for next year, it doesn't mean that the revenue is somewhere. The revenue is actually nowhere as we speak now. So it depends on the revenue that will be coming into the country or that the country will be generating from January. So we must ensure that we prioritize the revenue side of the budget. Because as of today, what we see in this country is that there is always emphasis on the expenditure side. And if the revenue side is not performing, then we are not yet there. So government has to ensure that we actually prioritize the issue of revenue so that the government is able to generate enough revenue to run the budget. And in doing this, there are issues that government will have to look at because it's not just revenue alone that determine the performance of the budget. So we have to look at the issue of capacity of the operator of the budget. Those that are meant to operate at the budget, we must look at their capacity. Do they have the capacity to actually ensure that they are able to do the right thing at the right time so that the budget is well implemented? And having said that, the issue of linkages in government revenue, we have to also look into that because we cannot run away from the fact that there's always these leakages in terms of the money that comes to government coffers. So if we don't look at that to ensure that we block those leakages, then our revenue side will not be performing.
Okay, all right. So with this, what are we to expect for 2025?
All right. So for 2025 now, considering the estimate that government has put in place, so we must ensure that our government, for instance, now I'm aware about the tax bill, the tax bill that is presently before the National Assembly. I am sure that if we are able to pass that bill, we must be able to have a consensus. As we can see now, there are a lot of divergent views as far as this tax bill before the National Assembly is concerned. And I'm sure that government also must also be looking at that tax bill as something that can also help us to reposition the revenue of the country. So we have to have a look, everybody, there must be a consensus in terms of that tax bill before the National Assembly so that it can be passed in good time, so that the benefits which government has promised can be brought to the doorstep of the people. So that's just what we need to do in essence. So we must ensure that we get enough revenue to implement the budget in 2025. And by doing that, we also ensure that those that are to operate the budget, that they are very much in place or that they have the capacity to do that. If you look at what has been allocated to infrastructure, you will agree with me that, in fact, it's just like we are just starting. Because there is that consensus in this country today that we have infrastructural deficit. That is, there's a gap in terms of our infrastructure. And so for us to bridge this gap, it's not something that can be done in a single fiscal year. So we have to consistently fund our infrastructure so that within the next few years or maybe let's say a decade. So the deficit that we have in terms of our infrastructure, we're able to deal with that. I also need to look at the allocation to agriculture properly. So that because if we cannot feed ourselves as a country, then what we are here to start anything. So we have to ensure that agriculture is well funded, so that at least the issue we can, if we know what is going out there, the issue of increase in the cost of food is something that is affecting everybody in the country. So government has to ensure that we fund agriculture the way we need to fund it, so that we can encourage our youth to come into agriculture. And by saying this, I'm not saying that we should be buying hoes and cutlasses. I know that even the subnational government, they have so much to do on this issue of agriculture to ensure that at least we are able to feed ourselves. I'm also aware that we also have some good allocation for education sector. So we have to educate our youth. We have to ensure that the right knowledge is given to them, especially those that can give them the right skill that can make them become the employer of labor rather than to be looking for job. So I've seen the allocation for education is very okay, and even for the health sector. So all of these are good areas that government need to prioritize. Don't forget that a healthy somebody is a wealthy somebody. So if our nation is healthy, then we can become wealthy. So government should also continue to ensure that this allocation that we have given this year, that we are consistent with it, because the challenge we have now, that we cannot solve all those challenges in one fiscal year. But I think it's a good place to start.
All right, we really thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on Galaxy TV News. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, thank you very much for having me.